So welcome, yes, Owen Jones from Looply. We focus on essentially organizational security by design. So it's all about how do you build and grow a secure business and taking a new approach, going beyond compliance and baking security into the DNA of your business. So basically I'm going to talk about how you do that and why it's important. So if this goes through, next. I'm probably going to talk less than I planned because I've got a bit of a sore throat, so I might just summarize bits. So key takeaways, I'll start with sharing some facts and figures, go through what information cybersecurity is, a reminder of compliance doesn't make you secure, and then going to do something a bit different about actually how you build and grow a secure business through the eyes of the three little pigs. Because I know that information cybersecurity can be a dry topic, so let's see if we can have a bit of fun with it. So let's start with the facts and figures. I'll open the floor, see if anyone's got any guesses, or maybe put in the chat. By 2025, what do you think the annual cost of cybercrime will be globally?
I think I've seen this in one of. No, I think it's in the billions, isn't it?
No, it's well beyond billions. Try a T.
Oh, my word.
Right, so let's, if everyone's ready. 10.5 trillion. And obviously this doesn't account for inflation, but to put it in perspective, the TCO of the 2008 financial crisis was 10 trillion. So it's like that every year, or it's going to be like that every year. Next one, cyber attacks are more likely to take down a jet than a missile. And probably the scariest one is this one. There has now been deaths that have been attributed to cyber attacks. The first one being in September 2020. So before we go into what we can do about it, let's do a very brief introduction about what exactly is information and cybersecurity. Essentially, it's based around three pillars, and the three pillars are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. What each one of them are, we'll go into the next one. So essentially, confidentiality is, are the right people, do the right people have the right access to the right things in the right way? A little summary there, so if you want to read that, feel free. And then move on to the next one. Integrity, essentially, are the systems and the data accurate? Has anything been corrupted? Do you know what you're looking at, and is it correct, ultimately? Which, especially with AI and data intelligence and data science, is becoming more and more important, because if you can't trust your data, what can you do? You're blind. And then availability. So essentially, can you access what you want when you need it? Right, so now we'll get on to a little bit more of a fun bit. So how do you build a secure business? So we'll start with setting the scene. So this was the old landscape everyone will be familiar with: the straw house, the wood house, and the brick house. So that's the old environment that the three little pigs operated in, with the old threat, which was the one big bad wolf. So what are they facing now? Well, they are facing this. There isn't now just one big bad wolf. There is an army of them, and they have armor and weapons. They have their own tools and technology to attack the three little pigs. They have scaling ladders. They have battering rams. So the obviously the brick house that used to survive doesn't stand a chance. So the three little pigs need to up their game if they're not going to end up as sausages. And how do they up their game? Well, they need to build something more secure to protect them and their assets. So how do they go about that? So I like to use NIST because it's a fairly simple in terms of front end talking about it. It's based on 5 capabilities. You look at identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So they need to look out, understand their environment, scope out their environment, identify any environmental threats. So are there, from them perspective, it would be flooding, wind, etc. So they need to factor in all the potential threats, whether they're the wolf or the environment. So that could be your business environment, could be your competitors, it could be you're looking at business resilience, it could be power grids, power failures, transportation, your internet. So it's making sure that you identify the potential risks and threats to your business, understand them, and then you can factor that into the design to protect and respond to risks and threats. Then they move on to protect. So you can't get away with a brick house, so you need to build a fort that safeguards and gives you shelter and protects you from the elements, the environment, and the threats. But you can't just cower behind bricks. You need to be more proactive. So how do you go about that? So you need to actively detect, so you need to be able to spot risks, threats on the environment. That could be the wolves coming through to attack, that could be other threats, risks, things that are going on day to day. So keep an eye on short-term and long-term threats. Once you know what's coming your way or what could come your way, you can plan appropriately to respond to those risks and those threats. And then you can respond. But how do you respond? It's not just enough to go, we have lots of technology. Technology are tools that help you. They are not solutions. So if I'm going to sort of mix analogies at the moment, if we look at, let's say, tailoring, so suits, if I gave you a bag with everything that is required to make a suit, could you make a suit? You have the tools, but you don't have the solution. So you need to be able to use those tools. So it's not enough that the 3 little pigs have the equipment, the technology, the tools to respond to threats and risks. They need to know how to respond to it. They need to practice responding, not just using the tools, but practicing the drills, practicing the responses, going through drills, going through desktop scenarios, looking at what are the potential risks and threats, mapping out scenarios and testing their response in both test and real life scenarios, and feeding that back and learning from the findings. So you're constantly assessing. After you've responded, you need to recover. But it's not just about how do you get back to where you were, it's learning from what happened and improving. So continuous improvement is a key part to it. So learn the lessons, and then when you essentially build back better, you improve your processes, you improve your policies, your technology, your systems, your skill sets, your knowledge, etc. So that's a summary of how you could do it, but ultimately all this means nothing without good communication. So an example I like to use is TalkTalk. When they had the cyber attack, sorry. Yeah, when they had the cyber attack, their communication was beyond awful. Essentially, the CIO went on Twitter and blamed their customers for the breach. And obviously, no one here is going to be stupid enough to do that. But ultimately, without communication, significant damage can still be done. So you need to be able to know who you need to, what are your stakeholders, both internal and external. Get ready, have communication templates, and again, practice the communication, have it ready to go through and involve the relevant stakeholders, both internally and externally. But of course, the threat doesn't just apply to businesses, it applies to people, and that's even more important when it comes to training and to get engagement from staff members in training, because the cyber training isn't just a help for the business, it's a help for the individual, because the threats that could affect the business could affect your personnel. So in a way, it's a safeguarding responsibility as well. So you're helping to protect not just your business, but your staff. As if they have issues, they're going to be distracted. They're not necessarily going to be as productive as they otherwise would be. So it's in everyone's interest, not just to protect the business, but to protect the individuals. So keeping with the fairy tales theme, probably one of the first stories around impersonation and identity theft was Little Red Riding Hood. So obviously she's walking back through the woods with a woodsman. The wolf finds her, but obviously she's not an easy target because she's protected. She's got protection. She's got security in the guise of the woodsman. So what does the wolf do? Can't attack Red Riding Hood, but wants to. So you don't attack directly, you attack indirectly. So the grandmother was a much easier target. So the wolf essentially attacked the grandmother and stole the grandmother's identity, and then exploiting the trusted relationship that Little Red Riding Hood had with the grandmother, was then able to get to Little Red Riding Hood. So there's lots of sort of interesting scenarios that you can apply the fairy tales to in information and cybersecurity context. So that's the whistle-stop tour of security, how to go about it and why. I thought I'd leave more time for questions so I could delve into more detail about what to do and how to do it.
Thanks, Owen. Do you want to stop presenting and then we can...
Yes.
Anyone, if they've got any questions? Martin's got his hand up.
Hi, Owen. How are you doing?
Very well, yourself?
Good, good. Thank you. I don't have a question. I just want to say I love the way you using what are they? Really identifiable stories to make this complex topic really accessible. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I will just say also thank you to you on that regard, because your input into the Startup to Stand Up community has helped me refine this approach.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And you've got the best use of AI generated images I've seen to date. So can I give you one more tip?
Yes.
You make the images full screen and take the slide text off, because you don't need the slide text. We don't need it. And I can't see your beautiful images enough. And I think I love it. I love it. So I just thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same. For a subject that probably is not that interesting to most people, I actually sat there and was quite engrossed. And like Martin said, the pictures was fascinating. You got so much from them, so well done.
Yeah, that was the most time-consuming part of the presentation, was putting in the correct prompts for Midjourney to generate the images that I wanted.
Yeah, and to be honest, if you ever think about cybersecurity again, I will go back to them pictures and think of how cool them Three Little Pigs. Why they've not made a Disney version of the Three Little Pigs fighting all the wolves? That would be amazing. But Stacey's got a question.
Thanks, Owen. I too like the pictures. That was a fun little ad, especially on a topic that can be really dry.
Yes.
So I come from a corporate background where this was always present front and center, especially as we were dealing with a lot of data, in particular patient healthcare data.
Yeah.
So now in the world of starting and being in a startup, and very focused on technology, data, etc. When do you begin to incorporate? When is the right starting point? Because I could go, being very hyper aware, I could think about this right now, but I don't have data right now. but I know it's coming. So when is the right time, really?
Well, it's that old cliche of it's never too early. The earlier the better. But in terms of generally what I would advise is with startups, I would say the ideal point to start is you have an offering, you're taking it to market, and you're at the point where you're wanting to build a business around the offering to take it to market. That's the point that's best to start thinking about it, because it's quite quick and easy to start putting in well, it's not necessarily putting in controls, because the idea is you design the business to be secure. So as you're building the business, you're essentially engineering security into how the business functions and operates. Because what tends to happen, and why security can be problematic, is organizations go, well, we have these business processes, we have these ways of working, and what we're going to do is we're going to layer security controls on top. So it's a bit like again, to pick random kids analogies, Buckaroo. So you have the donkey and you're just putting more stuff on it and on it and on it and on it. So ultimately the business then rebels because it's causing too much problem for the business. So instead of layering security on top of what you're doing, what you should really do is design it or bake it into the DNA of the business and how the business functions. So you don't have a business workflow that you put security controls on top of. You have a business workflow that is engineered to be secure, which also reduces human error, because the whole point of that is you're not having to think what to do while you're doing what you're doing from a business day-to-day perspective. Just by following the workflow, you are doing the right thing from a security point of view. So the idea is, if you again borrow from training where you have unconscious incompetence all the way through to unconscious competence, you want not just your people, but the business to be conscious/unconsciously competent. So you're not having to think about doing the right thing, you're naturally doing the right thing.
Thank you. I love how you put my conscious and unconsciousness into this. Thank you.
Peter has got a question.
Hi. Yes, following on from the point you made then about building things in a design stage. I mean, I worked in IT many moons ago, and one of the key weapons we had or protections, was actually isolation. And I think a lot of people have forgotten about that these days. And if you isolate your systems, I mean, for example, what about putting a wire fence around grandma's cottage? You've provided a protection for grandma then for that, and you isolate your different areas off into different things. With me, with having a transport system, one of the things I'm building in as a design feature is make sure that my operating system in no way is able to access the internet, because I see the internet as being the carrier of all those bad things that you're bringing into the business. And by having a standalone isolated system, which is not necessarily straightforward, because people have a natural tendency to want to use the internet, but having a separate email networks, having a separate network for very secure systems. But but it's a great presentation anyway. Very thought provoking.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll say in terms of the isolating things, essentially what you're talking about is erecting barriers. And there may be circumstances where it's appropriate to erect those barriers, but ultimately you're introducing friction into the business. So again, if you think about, let's go to the athletics track. So you have different races, you've got hurdles, and you've got basically just standard flat sprints. It's the need to be secure that introduces hurdles or friction or barriers. The objective of effective security is to remove or reduce those barriers as much as possible, so the business can run as efficiently and effectively as possible. So there will always be scenarios where you're introducing a degree of a barrier or friction, but it's balancing that out and assessing the risk and essentially the risk reward. And is the friction you're introducing worth the reward that you're getting, given the impacts it has on the wider business.
Which goes back to your point about making sure if you design things, put things in at a design stage, you can reduce that friction down.
Yes.
Thank you. I've got Neil.
Hi, and thanks very much for the presentation. Really interesting. I'm obviously having a cybersecurity morning because just actually put a website live for a cybersecurity client of mine during our meeting before this. But it was working on the secure by design. They work in the kind of MOD side of the business and kind of like consultants in that side. But what I've learned during that activity is amazing, the fact that, you know, the amount of cybersecurity, how important that is, the fact that government agencies are being attacked by small, you know, people in the private sector don't have good enough security, but then they've got relationships with, say, government bodies. Those who are pushing cyber or trying to hack into these systems are going in through the private sector into government bodies, and that kind of almost puts an onus or responsibility onto, you know, people starting jobs to actually go, well, I'm not going to be able to work with government companies if my business or my platform isn't stable. But I also love the term secure by design, because as a designer, we always used to find ourselves that we used to go and make businesses look pretty at the end once they come up with a product or service. But for us now, design has to be at the center of how businesses succeed. And I think it's the same with security, obviously, because it's just so important. And it's just that cultural change, thinking security isn't something you can stick on the end. It's something that you actually have to go, for my business to be successful, my data needs to be secure.
Yeah.
And I just love that way of thinking.
Yeah. Exactly, and it goes beyond the IT. So, which is why I'm saying organizational security by design, because it's not just about designing secure systems, solutions, infrastructure, applications. You need to design the business as a whole to be secure. So it's applying that principle to organizational design.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I'll make a connection between you and my client, because I think you guys will find each other fascinating.
Thank you.
I've got a question. Has anyone else got a question before I ask my question? No? Okay. My question, Owen, is, in the startup world, in presentation and people going for funding, why is this not more relevant? As in, if I was an investor, the first thing I should want to know is, if I get 6 months down the line and you ain't got this all set up and you go bust, I lose my money. So one of the questions is why is there not like an accreditation that you say, I've got this means I'm rubber stamped on that side? And what's your opinion on that in the startup world?
Well, there's different types of standards and certification. You can get. A good starting point is Cyber Essentials Self-Cert. So there's 2 levels of Cyber Essentials, Self-Cert and Plus. So Self-Cert is very much that, it's self-certified. You still have to get a third party to review and sign off and say, yes, your answers meet the criteria to award this, but they take it on face value and on faith that what you're saying is accurate. And that can be done quite quickly, easily, and cheaply. And it just gives that initial sort of bit of credibility. From an investor point of view, that's a question I've been asking for a long time. Why isn't it not factored more in? But also, I'd say, think more broadly beyond just a business could get attacked, and that reputational damage or impact at the wrong time could wipe out the business and you lose your investment. It's not just a insurance against negativity, it's a driver of value, because ultimately, what do businesses rely on? They rely on trust. If you have no trust, you have no business, because no one will buy from you. You will get no new customers. You will keep no existing customers. So security done correctly, messaged correctly, actually is a value center that directly contributes to the bottom line of the business, because if you can demonstrate and build more trust more quickly, your customer conversions improve, your customer retention rates improve, therefore your bottom line improves. So all I'll say is cybersecurity isn't a necessary evil, isn't a necessary cost. It's a value center that can drive and enable business growth.